What's up, brothers and sisters? I hope you all are doing very well and are blessed in the name of Jesus. In this video, I'm going to be talking about a problem that I see is that a lot of people pick one side of the spectrum that is either believing that either over spiritualizing things to the point where they're almost paranoid, or under spiritualizing to where everything's physical and they don't even give any credit or acknowledgement to the spiritual realm. And I'm going to be talking about the fruits of falling too far on one side of the spectrum and how it bears bad fruit almost every time, and the biblical view of how these two things, the spiritual realm and the physical realm, actually work together and are really inseparable. One of my favorite books in the Bible that I believe that demonstrates exactly what I'm talking about in terms of the balance between the spiritual and the physical realm is going to be the book of Job. And the reason why is that basically the book starts off with Satan coming up to the throne of Jesus, and he's looking, basically scouring the earth, looking who at anyone to see if they're righteous, and he wants to judge, he wants to condemn and persecute people before God. And God says, "Look at my servant Job." Gives him permission to test Job. He says, "Do what you want with him, just don't kill him." And basically, Job, the things that Job goes through, right? His family dies. He gets very extremely sick. His wife's telling him to deny God altogether. His friends are telling him that he's in sin and that he brought this upon himself. See, what I want to look at about this story is the fact that all of these things are physical, but nobody would read the book of Job and say that it is purely physical. So my point is that often, and I believe all the time, the spiritual realm and the physical are inseparable, meaning there are forces at play going on in the spiritual that affect the physical in everything. But there's another side of the spectrum, too, that isn't just the side of the spectrum that doesn't think anything is spiritual, which I think is way more harmful. But and this other side is way less common, and it's basically the people that view nothing as physical, almost in kind of like a Gnostic kind of a way, and they can't even articulate, how the spiritual and the physical are both active realities at the same time. And oftentimes this, when it's brought to the extreme, bears fruits of like paranoia and kind of a way of being that almost altogether misses the whole idea of the sovereignty of God altogether. But I'm going to go back to talking about the side of the spectrum that I believe is much more harmful, that more people adopt, and that is the side that is to give no acknowledgement of the spiritual realm. And I think that the fruit of this is that it limits people in their capacities to engage in spiritual warfare. Like when you don't view things as when you don't view temptation as spiritual warfare, then you're not going to battle against it as Jesus calls us to. When you don't view trials as spiritual warfare, you're not going to battle them, and you're not going to get through them in the way that Jesus tells us to. Worries, doubts, all these things, they're all spiritual warfare. But one common fallacy that's used by a lot of very unspiritual people is not everything is a demon, whatever the heck that's supposed to mean. But the Bible even specifically says in Ephesians 6, verse 12, it says that we don't war against flesh and blood, and flesh and blood being the seen realm, but against powers and principalities in the unseen realm. So practical examples of this being the way that things being the way that they are for spiritual reasons in everyday life. Temptation being one. Many sicknesses are also caused by demons. And like I said, this doesn't discount the physical. It just means it's not limited to the physical. I like the analogy almost like it's like an onion, right? The outside layer is what we see, but the inside layer is the spiritual, what we don't see. It's still going on, and it doesn't eliminate the fact that there's still a reality of an outside layer. There's still the truth of there is a physical, and that doesn't contradict the fact that there's also there's a physical and a natural. The spiritual doesn't contradict that in the same way that the spiritual doesn't contradict the physical. They're not at odds with each other. Things like natural disasters, even weather at times. I want you guys to notice that Jesus, when there was that storm, and the disciples were freaking out, Jesus woke up and he rebuked the wind and the waves. I think that this is significant because it kind of shows us that that was an attack from Satan, and that Jesus had to rebuke them in order to subside the waves and the winds. And look at the Old Testament. Look at all the plagues, and look at all the, I don't think anyone could read the Old Testament and come away with a understanding that that everything is so physical in the way that most people understand it. And if they can, then I believe it's a demonic stronghold that they need deliverance from. But yeah, look at the plagues in the Old Testament. Look at Egypt. Look at the sorcery. You cannot deny that physical things have spiritual reasons behind why they are the way that they are. And I think that a lot of people want to discredit that. But I think that the reason why a lot of people want to discredit that is because the devil wants to discredit that. And if he can get it in people's minds that everything is physical and nothing is spiritual, well, then we don't do things like pick up the sword of the Spirit. We don't do things like put on the armor of God, because now we're not warring against spiritual enemies. We're just warring against this hyper ambiguous term that is like the flesh, but except viewed in a way that's not even a real adversary, not a real enemy. It's just desires found within myself, which they are, but people can't see past and can't understand the spiritual aspect of things, and it very much hinders them from walking in the Spirit and walking according to the way that Jesus wants us to walk. So that's all I got for this video. If this has been helpful, I'd appreciate you guys liking and subscribing. But yeah, God bless you all. I pray that that you guys receive revelation on the spiritual realm. And if you haven't yet, just realize that it's better to realize and acknowledge that that you don't have it figured out and you don't understand what's going on in the Spirit than to limit God in your own mind. But yeah, guys, that's all I got for you. Be blessed in the mighty name of Jesus. I hope that you guys are doing amazing. Yep. See you later.